Take this handyman who was busy grinding something when the steel grinding wheel snapped, flew off, and struck him right in the visor. An inch more, and that was
What it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD. You guys want to watch the original video? The link's in the description down below. Let's be naughty.
Niagara Falls. I've never been to Niagara Falls, but I'd love to visit. The trio of waterfalls are renowned worldwide for their outstanding natural beauty. I wouldn't, however, like to jump in the water at the top of them and ride the current off the edge.
No.
But some people apparently do like that idea, like the guy who did exactly that back in July 2019. Sometime in the early morning, a man was observed climbing over the retaining wall of the largest of the falls before diving into the pool. Unsurprisingly, he was quickly dragged towards the edge before being swept straight off and plummeting a dizzying 188 feet down the vertical cliff edge.
What?
Yikes. And just to make it worse, Niagara Falls is known to have huge, deadly boulders lying beneath its waters. Great. Yet, somehow, the man was found on the ground below harboring only minor injuries. Yep, you guessed it. It turns out he was actually Superman. Okay, just kidding. But he was super lucky to escape, though. You see, at the time, Lake Erie, which flows into the falls, was experiencing the highest water levels it had ever seen. Because of this, water was rushing from the lake to the falls with much more momentum than usual. So when the man jumped in, he was swept to the edge and propelled off with greater force, overshooting the boulders below and living to tell the tale. Hopefully this taught our wannabe Darwin Award winner that retaining walls are put up for good reasons.
Yeah.
Bouncing Betty. You'll be glad you got this far in the video. Because our story of Betty Lou Oliver is so wild, it'll make even your worst day look like a fairy tale. It all started back in July 1945. It was the final months of World War II, and 20-year-old Betty was working on the 80th floor of the Empire State Building as an elevator attendant. At the same time, the young, competent, but overly confident Captain William Smith was flying his B-25 service bomber on a return mission to New York City. Conditions were extremely foggy, but Smith ignored advice to land. Suddenly, Betty heard a tremendous boom. The whole world seemed to splinter, and before she could react, she was thrown off her feet and sent flying through the air before smashing straight into a wall. Her pelvis, back, and neck all broke instantly. Captain William Smith, however, had suffered worse. Due to the fog, he'd underestimated how high he was flying and piloted his plane smack bang into the side of the building. It was a mistake that cost him his life. Reacting quickly to the carnage, first aid workers rushed to Betty and lifted her onto a stretcher before rolling her into the elevator to take her down safely. But just as they pushed her on, things got a whole lot worse. The cables, weakened by the crash, snapped. Betty got an almighty jolt before being sent hurtling 75 stories down the elevator shaft. That's a huge 1,000-foot drop. And remember, she was already severely injured. So how the heck could anybody get out of this one alive? Well, when the cables holding the elevator broke, all 1,000 feet of them pinged down the shaft faster than the elevator itself. They hit the bottom before Betty did and acted as a cushion, dampening her fall. Which, yeah, is absolutely insane. Though battered and broken, Betty made an incredible recovery and was back to full health in just 8 months. Wow, she really bounced back from that one. Fearsome flooding. Horror films are scary, sure, but one of the scariest things a human can endure is the force of nature. The citizens of Peru saw just how terrifying that could be back in March 2017, when the country was hit by the worst floods it had seen in decades. After floodwaters blocked the way of one man, he decided to risk driving through them anyway.
Dumbass!
Yeah, not a good idea. By sheer luck, he escaped without any serious injury, but I can't say the same for his car. Yep, absolute carnage. No questions asked. Think back to the beginning of this video, and you should remember the woman who narrowly avoided being hit by a meteorite. That's crazy, don't get me wrong, but it's kind of what meteorites do. They fall from the sky. Pickup trucks, however, generally don't.
What?
Which is why one resident of Kwamakutha, South Africa, got a big surprise when they were rudely awoken by one smashing through their ceiling. Unbelievably, neither truck driver nor homeowner were injured, which is crazy enough in itself. But considering pickup trucks isn't a type of weather, this story is as crazy as they come. When asked how it happened, the truck driver simply said he drove over a ramp of some sort. And, that's it.
What?
Right. Witnesses say the car went flying off the road before coming down hard on the house. But I'm failing to see how that's even possible. It didn't just land vertically, it landed backside first. Do you have any ideas how this could have happened? If so, let me know down in the comments. Lone Ranger. When I was a kid, I got lost in the local grocery store and ended up crying about it for days. So if I'd ended up in a life or death situation, I'm sure it would have been game over for me. But young AJ Elfalak is obviously made of sterner stuff. Back in the fall of 2021, the 3-year-old Australian boy
I jump scared myself.
sparked panic when his parents realized he'd gone missing from their New South Wales home. A huge search operation was called into action, but after 3 days, hope was beginning to run out. Then, incredibly, the boy was found just half a mile from his house, alive and drinking water from a local creek. He wasn't just alive, though. He seemed relaxed and content in his predicament. AJ has autism, and researchers reckon it's what helped him survive his 3-day ordeal. Apparently, autistic children are often less aware of danger than others, and enjoy exploring more, too. They're also more likely to be less sensitive to pain. This would certainly have been helpful considering the Australian bush is known for its nasty, biting bugs and harsh drops in temperature. So rather than panicking like most of us would, young AJ kept his cool and just got on with it until he was found. What a little legend. It's raining men.
No, it's not.
You
Don't
could
do
argue that
Don't you do that to us. Better not be. I'll get a big ass umbrella. I don't want to hear that shit.
everybody who came out of World War II alive was ludicrously lucky. But Alan McGee, a U.S. ball turret gunner, really pushed his luck to the limits. McGee was in the turret of his B-17 bomber flying over German-occupied France in 1943, when suddenly the plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire. Wasting no time, he climbed out of the turret and into the main body of the plane to grab his parachute. But his heart quickly sinking, he realized it'd been torn to shreds.
Oh no!
Then the plane came under even more fire, blowing a whole section of the right wing off. Chaos erupted and the plane was flung into a deadly downward spin. Before McGee could do anything, he passed out from lack of oxygen. But just as the B-17 was about to explode, the force of its spinning descent sent him shooting out of the side. The unconscious McGee soared through the air before plummeting over 4 miles down to his certain doom. Only it wasn't to his doom. Instead of colliding straight into the ground, the ball turret gunner smashed through the glass roof of St. Nazaire Railroad Station, and miraculously, it was that saved him. Despite 28 shrapnel wounds, several broken bones, and severe damage to much of his body, McGee survived. The glass had broken his fall just enough to save him from becoming a pancake. After being taken as a prisoner of war, he was given medical treatment and stayed in fascist-occupied France until the war's end. And he ended up living to the grand old age of 84.
Damn.
Boy, what a tale to tell the grandkids. Tornado terror. There are a few things I look for when trying to find a new place to live. A nice house, friendly neighborhood, and a general lack of deadly tornadoes. But if you live in Texas, it's tough to find somewhere that's got all 3 of these. Back in March 2022, 16-year-old Riley Leon found this out the hard way. The teenager was driving back from a job interview in Elgin, Texas, where he suddenly felt the back of his pickup truck jolt upwards. Before he could even react, the rest of the car followed, and Riley was lifted completely off the ground. Holding onto the steering wheel for dear life, he braced as the entire vehicle was flipped in the air and came crashing back down to the ground on its side. But the nightmare wasn't over yet. As Riley continued to grip the wheel, the truck began spinning around on its axis, like some kind of messed up merry-go-round. After a few seconds of this disorienting danger ride, the truck was lifted back up off the ground and remarkably landed on all four wheels again. Wasting no time, Riley hit the gas and accelerated away from the tornado and back to safety. Despite needing medical care, I'm glad to say he's doing okay, though that truck is in desperate need of a new paint job.
Oh my God.
Fridge fright. I don't know about you, but I'm prone to getting claustrophobic if I'm in a small, enclosed space, which is why I'd probably be a goner if I'd been in the same position as one 11-year-old Filipino boy was back in April 2022. The Philippines is prone to all kinds of extreme weather, and that month a huge tropical storm was wreaking havoc across the country. The boy, called CJ, was at home sheltering from the storm with his family when the unthinkable happened. A colossal mudslide careened straight into the side of his house, smashing through it and devastating the building. By sheer luck, CJ wasn't hit by the initial blast and used his quick thinking to run into the kitchen and, believe it or not, climb inside the fridge. By knocking all the food out, clambering in, and shutting the door behind him, CJ managed to secure himself protection from the raging storm. But his ordeal wasn't over. From his tiny, pitch-black chamber, he could hear a hurricane laying waste to everything outside.
Damn.
And it carried on for hours, sending the fridge flying and breaking CJ's leg. But the boy didn't move, and ended up hunched inside for a total of 20 hours before the storm finally died down. So, by the time a rescue team eventually arrived on the scene, you can bet the poor kid was ecstatic at being taken out of his self-imposed prison. Despite having been in a fridge, I'm sure he was anything but chilled out. Double whammy. It's hard to imagine anyone more down on their luck than the homeless. But even the—
That's their fault. They gotta get jobs, dude. I was homeless for like 8 months. I was literally living on the street. I had no friends, no family, no nothing. I got a job and I worked my ass off and got some roommates. And then I got on my feet and got a better job and then was stable. Bro, these people are homeless by choice. They just want to play the victim card. You know what I mean? Like, bro, no.
The unluckiest people are sometimes thrown a bone or two. Like Robert, a homeless man from Denver who was riding his bicycle across—
God damn, this nigga ugly. This nigga built like Human Master Splinter.
fall of 2008. Out of nowhere, a reckless driver crashed straight into him, knocking him to the ground. But instead of stopping to check if he was okay, they drove right off again. What a jerk. In Robert's first stroke of luck, though, a passerby was kind enough to call an ambulance for him, and upon arriving at the hospital, it was found he only had minor injuries. Now, getting hit by a car and coming out of it with just a scrape is pretty lucky. However, Robert obviously wasn't happy to settle at just that. After spending a few hours in the hospital and getting released early in the morning, he got back on his bike and started cycling again until he came to a railway bridge. In the distance, he could see the lights of a train approaching. But hey, surely he couldn't be hit again, right? Judging himself to have enough time to cross, Robert got off his bike and made a run across the tracks, though apparently he judged wrong. Before he could get to the other side, the train rammed into his backside and he was flung headfirst off the bridge. Oh boy. By some miracle, it was only a 10-foot drop into the creek below, and Robert again managed to avoid serious injury. He got lucky that time, but there's a lesson somewhere here about not trying to cross railway bridges while a train is careening towards you. Yeah, who'd have thought it? Stuck in the middle. Whether you drive or not, the idea of being involved in a car crash—
Why the fuck did he get off the bike? Because he's a dumbass!
is terrifying for pretty much everyone. Some crashes are worse than others, though, like the insane accident Caleb Whitby was involved in. One foggy night in January 2015, Caleb was driving down the Oregon interstate when the semi-truck in front of him spun out of control and jackknifed. Caleb, unable to slow down in time, plowed straight into the back of it, flipping his pickup. That by itself is pretty shocking, but it was nothing on what happened next. As Caleb watched in horror, a second tractor trailer came hurtling towards the back of him. He closed his eyes and gripped the steering wheel, and then, bang, there was another almighty crash. Metal and glass shattered and crunched all around him as the second truck ground into the first, with Caleb in the middle. His pickup was crushed like a soda can, and yet, somehow, Caleb, in the middle of it all, was alive. In fact, he barely had a scratch on him, though that still looks like something out of my worst nightmares. Regardless, he was helped out of the decimated vehicle and lived to tell the tale. But how? Well, Caleb owes his life to crumple zones. These are areas on a car that are built purposefully weaker than the rest, so that if you crash, they crumple instead of the important bits, like the parts around you. And they certainly did their job for Caleb, absorbing all the impact of the crash so that his seat and body remained
he got trash compacted for real.
Intact. Now that's what I call a compact car. Daring Dick.
What?
You might have heard of a certain infamous cruise ship called the Titanic. You probably haven't heard of one of its bravest passengers, though, Dick Williams. Dick was an American tennis player, and when he boarded the doomed vessel in April 1912 with his father Charles, they had no idea what was about to befall them. When the ship hit the iceberg, both Dick and his dad stayed aboard as long as possible, helping everyone they could get to safety. Dick even freed a trapped passenger from their cabin by breaking down the door. Then, just before the ship went completely under, father and son both leapt off into the water. Heartbreakingly, Charles didn't make it. A huge funnel from the ship fell down on him as he jumped. Dick, however, managed to swim to a lifeboat and climbed aboard with some other survivors. But once in, he found himself knee-deep in ice-cold water, with nothing to throw it out with. Using their bare hands would have been incredibly painful, and so, for hours, Dick and the other survivors sat shaking in the freezing water. Eventually, they were rescued, but the terrible cold had left Dick with severe frostbite in both his legs. The doctors were insistent that they needed to be amputated, but Dick wasn't just going to lie down and let that happen. Oh no. He refused the operation and instead forced himself to stand up every 2 hours and walk around to keep circulation in his legs, which would have been painful as all hell. Astonishingly, it worked. Dick made a full recovery and went on to forge a successful tennis career, winning a gold medal in the 1921 Olympics. And he also fought in the First World War, earning multiple service medals for his achievements. Yeah, Dick didn't just survive the impossible, he thrived off it. Closest calls. I had a close call the other day when I thought I'd accidentally followed through on a particularly dicey fart. Luckily, I hadn't. Some people, however, have had decidedly dicier close calls, like this guy who was changing a sprinkler in his front garden when out of nowhere, this happened. Thankfully, the tree landed in a way that left the man totally unharmed, but that's about as close as they come. Though this Wisconsin man certainly gave a good go at cutting it even closer. A few more seconds, and he'd have been right under that tree as it fell.
Damn!
Yeah, I bet he was relieved to get away from that one.
Yeah, that's real.
But life-threatening near misses aren't all tree-related.
Damn.
Take this handyman who was busy grinding something when the steel grinding wheel snapped, flew off, and struck him right in the visor. An inch more, and that would have gone straight into his eye.
Ow!
Thank God for visors. At least he wasn't stranded at the top of a burning building, though. Whoa. This unlucky roofer in Rodevor, Denmark, found himself trapped when a blaze started in the 6-story skyscraper and was slowly burning its way up. Amazingly, a quick-thinking crane driver maneuvered his hook to the roof of the tower so that the guy could jump onto it and be lowered to safety. Talk about hanging on for dear life. And finally, what do you reckon this is? Unsure? Okay, it's a British Royal Navy ship loaded with 1,100 tons of combustible fuel. And that's its anchor, lodged firmly into an old, unexploded torpedo. Jeez. When the ship's crew pulled the anchor up ready to set sail, they realized they'd inadvertently dropped it onto the torpedo, which had been laying at the bottom of the ocean since the 1980s whilst docking. Considering even old torpedoes can still explode, it's insanely lucky that everyone on board escaped in one piece. Well,
Oh, hell no. Bro, that's some wild shit, man. That's some wild shit.
since the last installment of people doing stupid things, I've been studying the stupid people of the world, and boy, have I found a lot. From those with tongues stuck to icy poles, to those wearing face masks with holes, I've rounded up the biggest buffoons and hopeless goons who have so kindly blessed us with their sheer stupidity.
Oh my
So
God.
join me as we delve into the stupid verse in People Doing Stupid Things Part 2. Ah, and here we see a wild Karen, found in Russia, seen communicating over a cellular device. As is often the case with this species, she is likely attempting to communicate with someone's manager, though this distraction causes her to hop back into her automobile, having left the gas nozzle in her tank.
Ooh.
Left seemingly baffled at the concept of her inattentiveness having actual consequences, the Karen is left wondering how the gas nozzle dare be so rude as to break off like that. But this stray airhead is far from the only instance of this particular brand of dim-wittedness. Gas stations far and wide have seen their machines snapped and tugged over by folks who'd probably forget to breathe if it was possible. A bit like this fellow, who was snapped looking desperately around the inside of his car for his keys, which were, of course, in his door all along. Truly, a modern genius. Back in 2020, at another gas station, employee Joseph Saman was approached by a Karen. While she dutifully wore her face mask, her comprehension of its purpose was questionable. Take a look here.
Hello. How you doing?
Pretty good. I need 10 on pump one, please.
Where'd you get that mask from?
Well, since we have to wear them and it makes it harder to breathe, this makes it a lot easier to breathe.
Cutting it?
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll do that too. Thanks for the
Have a good
advice.
day.
Appreciate you.
Safety first, right? Yep, this lady genuinely cut a hole into her mask so that she could breathe better, and seemed to see no problem at all. To paraphrase the words of the great intellect Forrest Gump, stupid really is as stupid does.
Man.
Deep in the streets of Sheffield, UK,
Have you guys noticed that the narrator has changed drastically in the last minute and a half?
one man spotted a bunch of airheads back in 2014. It seemed the family had managed to forage a free sofa, though attempting to squeeze it into their tiny Skoda was probably not the brightest idea they'd had all day. Even with a collective 6 eyes and 3 brains, they seemed unable to comprehend basic measurements of available space. 44-year-old Graham Longdon, who captured this hilarious struggle, explained how they pushed and pivoted the sofa for an extended time, their determination spurred on by the sheer power of ignorance. He rushed downstairs to get a better view, though in that short amount of time they were nowhere in sight, seemingly having miraculously scurried homeward with their new sofa. Rest assured, these aren't the only maniacs loose on the roads. Check out this video captured in 2018. As the guy filming drove along in Newport Richey, Florida, he noticed something slightly askew.
My nigga missing the whole wheel. He don't give a fuck. My nigga riding dirty. Literally, he don't give a shit. No fucks given.
Yeah, it goes without saying that you shouldn't drive with a missing tire. Or film while you're driving, for that matter. But as I'm sure most of us know, tires are an essential safety feature for cars. They provide a tactile material that aids the car's handling and braking. But if someone's dumb enough to actually fire up the engine knowing they have a missing tire, then you can probably assume safety is the least of their concerns. To successfully pull off a crime takes brains, but more often than not, those with brains choose not to commit crimes, which leaves mostly the brainless to recklessly commit crimes and not fully consider the consequences. In 2021, TikToker DJ Dave68 caught some interesting footage on his home's surveillance system. Of all the things to steal, some numbskull had their eyes on Dave's lovely flower-hanging baskets, though his grand heist didn't pan out as he anticipated.
Motherfucker, what? Plants?
I see London, I see France, I see some knuckleheads' underpants. Yep, while he managed to successfully secure the prized flowers, the same unfortunately cannot be said for his pants.
We out here gangbanging on bushes, nigga? You still in foliage, nigga? What are you doing?
But even with his great speed, it wasn't long before the law caught up with him for this, and 2 other crimes. Don't worry, pal. I hear prison uniforms have elasticated waistbands.
Bro.
In July 2003, another chump was caught in Oklahoma attempting to shoplift clothing. Jacob Wise had a cleverly devised plan where he would remove the security tags and steal the clothes without sounding the alarms. Yet, as he made his way out of the store, the alarms still triggered. How could this be?
He didn't do the technique. This is how you got to go through the metal detector. That's how you got to do it. You got to seizure your way through it, otherwise it'll see you coming.
Well, that would be because he hid the security tags in his pockets and forgot about them. Yep, the surname Wise sure has a heavy burden to carry when you're this wisdom deficient. Changing gears now, let me welcome you to Restaurant a la Disaster, the no-star restaurant serving only the most disastrous meals possible. And coming up, I have the most disastrous of all the 3-course meals in all the land. For starters, allow me to tantalize your taste buds with a bowl of fried rice. Only this fried rice is fried in all senses of the word. The Michelin chef responsible for this mess seemed to seriously misunderstand how to use a rice cooker, inadvertently melting the whole thing as she sat it on a hot stove to cook. If rice and melted plastic doesn't whet your appetite, you can always just nibble on the coasters, as one guest staying in an Airbnb did when they mistook them for biscuits. For our main course, it's an Italian classic, plasticone pizza. Fresh mozzarella on a stone-backed base infused with the plastic chopping board that it was thrown into the oven with. A red-hot disaster. We also have beers available to wash down your terrible meal with. Most of our diners at the Restaurant a la Disaster like to swill it around to really get the full experience.
That's what you get. That's exactly what you get. Yep.
Refreshing, right? I hope you have the room for something sweet, as dessert is coming up. Our head chef expertly uses a state-of-the-art iron to disastrously melt a whole bag of marshmallows. The melted sugar and plastic intertwine, resulting in a truly abysmal attempt at dessert that was shared in shame on Twitter. In the mood for the worst 3-course meal of your life? Come on down to Restaurant a la Disaster. You will be disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
Some of humanity's greatest discoveries were made by people who dared to think, dared to experiment, and be curious about the world. However, when your, Not the sharpest tool in the box. It's probably best you stay away from the lab coats and test tubes. In 2016, budding genius Tom Agnew had his breakthrough idea. He hypothesized that if he filled his iron up with flavored water as opposed to plain water, it would result in his ironed clothes smelling fresh and fruity just like the flavored water. Sounds like a nice idea, right? Well, as he got to experimenting, it soon became clear that the sugars of the flavored water had burnt and caramelized from the heat of the iron, resulting in both his iron and t-shirt being ruined. I mean, what are the chances? In a Facebook post, Tom even went on to implore how irons should come with a warning to not fill them with flavored water, because Lord knows how many others have played victim to the cruel misunderstanding. Another numbskull making moves on the scientific landscape is Seth Dameron. Being the inquisitive mind that he is, Seth wanted to find out once and for all whether tongues really do stick to icy poles. Why? Well, that why is a question science may never be able to answer. But nevertheless, Seth went ahead and did it. So let's see how Seth's scientific experiment panned out.
Yeah, it works, guys. It works. Oh my god, Mom.
Shocking results, huh? Seth's tongue became firmly stuck to the pole, and legend has it that he's still there today. Jokes aside, the reality is that the moisture of your tongue will almost immediately freeze when stuck to a pole, if said pole is below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And because metal is such a good heat conductor, it essentially robs your tongue of its heat, meaning the tongue will quickly freeze to the surface. And while a simple Google search will tell you that, Seth regrettably found out the hard way. Technology is another thing that can be particularly challenging for those with fewer brain cells. In fact, in 2015, Trevor Thomas headed to Reddit to share how his brother had been complaining that his car's music dock wasn't working. Not only that, but it was also scratching his phone's screen. It sounds outrageous, right? Well, this so-called dock was actually a cassette player. You know, the way the ancient civilization used to listen to music. Yep, Trevor's brother had allegedly been shoving his iPhone into the cassette player and expecting it to play his phone's music. There really is no hope for future generations, is there? Although, considering how hopeless my parents are with technology, it looks like there isn't much hope for older generations either. And while we're on the topic of technology, it seems this dummy wielding a pair of scissors didn't consider that they risked cutting through the wire when they cut through the plastic casing. Safe to assume they'll be needing another new charger. Though on this occasion, I'm willing to forgive them. That dastardly clamshell packaging can be a real nightmare to open. It's a whole breed of stupidity in and of itself. As for you, though, well, it's another story. I mean, look at you, sat there, deftly using a smartphone, TV, computer, or smart fridge to watch the brain-boosting content I provide. You must be quite a smart individual, and heck, while I'm at it, I bet you're incredibly charismatic and good-looking, too. And with a great wit and intelligence comes great responsibility. So why not drop me a like, subscribe, or even a comment down below? Y'all done? Great, now let's get back to this stupid verse. Like many living organisms, we humans instinctively feel the need to groom ourselves in order to appear more attractive to a potential mate. Though for our bird brain buddies, beauty regimes can more often than not end in complete disaster. In 2021, TikToker Abigail attempted to soak up the sun's rays and top up her healthy golden glow. The only issue was, she totally neglected to protect herself with sunscreen.
Oh, damn.
Shockingly, Abigail ended up becoming a hot, sizzling shade of red with gorgeous white patches from her bikini and sunglasses. Personally, I maintain my ghostly shade of white by avoiding sunlight at all costs. In the pursuit of beauty, choice of garment is crucial too. However, a person's choice in clothing can sometimes be indicative of their intellect, and not in a good way. For example, this t-shirt clearly shows Asia, right? Wait a minute. Yep, yeah, some genius t-shirt designer actually mistook Africa for Asia. What's more, it's likely that some other dummy is out there wearing this unironically, completely unaware of the geographical error they are sporting. Sunglasses and other accessories can also be used as fashion statements, but it seems there's a time and a place for them, as Kim Kardashian found out. In 2018, she played poker at a charity tournament in Texas, though it appeared the only person Kim was double bluffing was herself, as she opted to wear reflective sunglasses to hide her poker face. Just to reiterate, reflective, meaning people can see exactly what cards she had been dealt. The price we pay for fashion, eh? Another way in which we might attempt to enhance our beauty is with piercings. Piercings have been a common body modification for around 5,000 years. And in moderation, they can look great. Though, all things considered, it probably isn't a great idea to wear a tongue piercing when you have braces. Why? Well, I'll let TikToker Mia Carter do the talking, or at least try.
What?
It's stuck to my gate. I can't get out.
It's stuck to your what?
Oh my god. Yeah.
Oh God. Alright, go.
I can't get out.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't. My mouth is too tight. Look, stop laughing at me. Ow! I think I know.
That's it. Put it.
Mom, please help me.
Yep, in a nightmarish turn of events, Mia's piercing somehow got tangled in her braces, leaving her barely able to talk, as too much movement could have ripped the whole thing out. I don't think I've ever seen a more literal representation of the term tongue-tied. Similar to piercings, tattoos have been around since ancient times, though as we see time and again, they don't always come out great. Yikes. Which is exactly why it pays to shop around for a great tattoo artist. That said, before you start checking out their portfolio, you might want to check out their IQ. Allegedly, this poor chap went to the parlor and showed the artist a cool dragon design on his phone, though it seems he didn't realize that he needed to clarify that he wanted just the dragon and not the whole phone tattooed on him. As unfortunate as this may be, it seems like an unlikely story, and closer inspection makes this seem more like a terrible Photoshop job than anything else. For one thing, the tattoo appears to be too flat when you take into account how arms generally tend to, curve. So the question is, who's the real dum-dum here? The person responsible for the image, or their subpar Photoshop skills? Or anyone online who believed this pic was real? But if you want to see a real-life tattoo fail, then check out this guy's Chinese characters tat. Our dumb buds often get foreign language tattoos and neglect to double-check their actual meaning, which is especially apparent with languages using different alphabets. Now, I'm not exactly sure what the guy originally wanted tattooed, but when translated into simplified Chinese, his ink actually meant turkey sandwich. There's always a chance that he really loved turkey sandwiches, but I'm betting he was hoping for something a little more profound. The world of work is full of folks that leave you wondering, how did this schmuck ever get a job? Those with pea-sized brains eventually make themselves known in their places of work, as we can observe here with the person who painted this wheelchair access symbol. While most of us are aware that stairs are the wheelchair's natural sworn enemy, it appears that obvious conclusion didn't dawn on the dummy responsible. A similar lack of working proficiency can be seen here. Either the dingus behind this is blind or just has their head on upside down. Either way, they managed to post a full billboard upside down. But then again, perhaps this was an intentional marketing ploy to stop people in their tracks and notice the billboard, which would also lead countless people to seeing it in this video. Many others have done the same intentionally to stir up interest, but I can't help feeling it's a dumb tactic in itself. After all, anyone quickly passing by will probably only remember the fact that the billboard was upside down rather than the actual contents of the billboard's advertisement. The designer responsible for this hair salon's window sticker, meanwhile, didn't seem to comprehend how the implications of their design might scare customers away. Nothing like a .45 caliber blow dry to the back of the head. It appears that Starbucks employ a large concentration of dummies too, which is especially apparent when it comes to spelling people's names. We've all had our fair share of hilarious misspellings, but when a guy called Mark told the barista that it's Mark with a C, they seemed to misunderstand and put the C at the beginning of his name. Trust me, I get it, Kark. Be Amazed is a problematic name in Starbucks too. Surprisingly, the knuckleheads of the world often try their hand at DIY. And what could go wrong?
Everything.
Well, it just so happens a lot, which is why I've created my own newscast to keep up with all the dumb DIY mishaps of stupid people all around the world. I think it's about to start. Hello, this is Be Amazed, and I'm here with your 10 o'clock DIY news report, the newsfeed dedicated to people of Idiotsville who definitely shouldn't have done it themselves.
After this video,
In
I'm about
tonight's
to get up outta
headlines,
here.
an area woman has reportedly attempted some DIY on her old wardrobe, but has ended up painting stripes on all of her clothes. Scientists have confirmed that stripes are, in fact, so last season. The fashion police have remanded the woman in custody until a full investigation can be completed. Updates soon to follow. In other news, groundbreaking studies have found that Gen Zers are increasingly shoving hammers in their mouths for dramatic effect. This bizarre epidemic comes after a 14-year-old girl from Louisiana, Kaylee, went viral for getting a hammer stuck in her mouth. The girl, who is now able to talk since removing the tool from her mouth, claims she was discussing with her friend how the Korean pop band BTS are so beautiful she could shove a hammer in her mouth. Not quite the proof of concept I'd go for, but I'll allow it. It took around 10
All right,
minutes
see
to
you later,
dislodge
Mr.
the tool,
TJ.
leading evolutionary biologists to conclude that Gen Z may be the leading cause of human extinction. On to bathroom news now, and have you been thinking about calling in a professional to fix your soap dispenser? Well, it turns out it's probably not broken after all. For years now, residents of Idiotsville have been confused as to why their soap dispensers don't work. Well, new research shows that filling them with bars of soap is actually 100% ineffective. For better results, scientists recommend liquid soap. The study similarly found that when refilling salt and pepper dispensers, it's advisable to use loose product instead of sealed packets. The reports come after last year's discovery that you can actually replace a clock's batteries, as opposed to the old method of just taping a new one on top. Researchers are now looking into whether there's anything else we've been doing wrong here in Idiotsville. Now for the weather, and it's looking like yet another rainy day here in Idiotsville.
I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to comment, like, and or subscribe. Shout out to everybody who donated, man. I love you guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow.